Hey guys, Danny Gustin with Danny Gustin Fitness Podcast here with the one and only
Hi, everybody.
Tina Farkas, right?
Yes.
So today we're going to be talking about the benefits of strength training, but more in particular, women and weight training in 4 steps. So we're going to be talking about breaking myths of strength training for females, like getting too bulky. What's that all about? The real benefits of strength training, mood elevation, building muscle and strength, empowerment, just to name a few, energy. We're going to be talking about strength training and cardio, why they both matter and where they fall in terms of priority for various goals. And we're going to be talking about overcoming gym intimidation. Again, this is for women, right? Because a lot of women struggle with that more than men. And we're going to be talking through them and giving some practical tips for overcoming that gym intimidation. But yeah, you're going to want to stick around for all 4 of these points because, as we always do, we take some twists and turns and we get a little passionate and a little fired up at certain points because, again, it is something that means a lot to both of us. And Tina, obviously, here is a shining example of women in strength training, right? So, again, she made me a little self-conscious throughout the podcast. I felt like I need to cover my arms up. So, well, they are covered up. But anyways, thank you guys for being with us today, and I hope you enjoy it. So, Tina, thank you for being here.
I'm glad to be back.
Yeah.
Soon.
So soon, right?
Yes.
By popular demand.
Okay.
So so one of the things that you're very passionate about, and I'm also passionate about because I've interacted with so many women over the years who have concerns about weight training. And that's something, again, you feel very passionate about. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'd just love to hear your perspectives on it. You personally strength train, right?
Yes.
And so there's a few things you wanted to talk about today. So I'll let you get to it.
So the first thing I wanted to talk about is some of the myths that females think. Like the first one and the main one, I think, it's if I'm gonna lift weights, I'm gonna become bulky.
Yeah, I've heard
And
that
that
like a
is
million
not
times.
true. First of all, female, we don't have that much testosterone in our bodies to build these bulky big muscles.
Yeah.
So it takes us longer, and I think it's not even like possible for a female unless you take like special supplementation maybe and diet and like work out really hard.
Yeah.
But if you're just doing strength training on a regular basis, you're not going to become bulky. You're just going to become lean, more defined muscles.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't be afraid of like becoming big and look like a man.
Yeah, that's a great point. And one of the things I joke with some of my female clients and just women I know in general who say that, because it comes up often, is there are a lot of guys who wish that myth was true, right? Right? If they could just get bulky just by touching dumbbells, right? Or working out for 1 month and then you blow up.
Exactly.
There's a lot of guys who would love for that to be the case, right?
Yeah.
But it's not. It's not. It's a process over a long period of time. And to your point, women don't even have the hormonal profile in most, in all cases, to even make that happen, right? Without some sort of supplementation.
Supplementation, yeah. Plus the diet plays a big role. And a lot of women don't think that, you know, if I'm in a calorie deficit, I cannot build muscle. You have to eat in order to build. I
Yeah.
made that mistake for myself before, and I know, like, when I was just not eating enough and not understanding why am I not building any muscle? Why am I so weak? Why am I like I was not eating enough? And once I stopped that and I start prioritizing protein and actually eating more, that's when I start building. That's when I start seeing results,
Yeah.
getting stronger. And
Yeah. That's awesome. And myths in some ways can kind of be synonymous with stereotypes, right? So the first step in you wanted to talk about today was, again, this breaking the myth, and one of those is the bulky. But there is maybe some truth based in it, right? Just like I mentioned with the stereotypes, there's maybe some truth to it, right? Doesn't mean it's all the time, right? So where do you think there is some truth, and where do you think women get it in their minds that they are going to get bulky, right? So like one thing that comes to me, for example, where I can maybe give some credit to it is, let's say, for example, you're a guy and you naturally end up having really large pecs, right? Like Ryan, for example, one of our trainers
Yeah.
here, right? He could look at that. He doesn't mind because Ryan wants to be very muscular, but he could look at that and say, for example, oh, well, maybe I need to lay off the weights for my pecs because I just naturally have very developed muscular pecs, right?
Yeah.
So I do think there are some cases where women may have better genetics for growing their shoulders,
I
for
was gonna say.
example, right? And I think just in my own experience training women, most of the time women don't love the idea of having muscular pecs, muscular shoulders,
Or
right?
like upper body, yeah. And we tend to train lower body more.
Yeah, yeah, it's like the opposite. Guys are doing everything they
Yes.
can to avoid training lower body, and women are doing, everything they can to train lower body, right? It's like glutes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? So I think maybe that's the only truth to that myth, is that if you are someone who maybe is a bit more genetically gifted when it comes to your shoulders, maybe your trap muscles, that's not muscle groups that women typically love working as much. So maybe that would be an exception. In most cases, I think you're right that yes, the whole idea of getting bulky overnight and just slipping on a banana peel and being just jacked, right? Xena warrior princess, it's just not going to happen, right? Well, unless it's done progressively. But maybe that is the one exception, that if you are that woman who is more muscular here, then maybe it's just something. So that's where programming properly
Exactly,
comes
that's
in,
what I
right?
was
So
gonna say. That's
yeah,
where you modify the workout.
yeah. So what would be maybe something? So again, in most cases, it is a myth that women have to be too concerned about being bulky, right? But let's say in the case that's you're working with that client, the one who's more genetically gifted with the shoulder straps. What are some things you'd keep in mind?
We would probably focus on different muscle groups. We would still work on the shoulder, but maybe not as often,
Yeah,
because I think it's important to do full body workouts than just focusing on one muscle group.
yeah.
That's what I do for myself. Like I do just 3 full body workouts a week.
3 full body
Yeah.
workouts a week.
Because sometimes life happens, you skip a day, and
Yeah.
if you do the split, then that means you miss something, some part of the body. Let's say I'm supposed to do legs one day and upper body the other day, and something happened, so I skip that day. But
Yeah.
if I'm doing full body, okay, if I skip one, at least I got the 2.
Yeah.
So I hit my muscle groups at least twice a week,
Yeah.
trying 3 times.
The other nice thing about training full body is you can circuit it. So
Oh, yeah.
even if you were just at home,
Yeah, if you don't have enough time.
right, like doing something like, hey, in 10 minutes, how many squats, push-ups, and pull-ups, or maybe even just hanging, right? Or rows, right? How many can you go through? So that's one nice thing about the full body too, is you can get that feeling of an overall workout, right? But in my experience, one of the things I do for my female clients who have that concern, because I do have one client in particular where we noticed when she started lifting heavier with upper body, she was starting to get a little bit more built in her shoulders and her traps in particular, which again, that's not something she loved. Again, she's more of the classic woman, and she really just wants to work on her legs, her midsection, triceps. That's Nico's laughing because it's pretty much most women, right? Whereas guys, pecs,
Everybody wants that.
biceps, lats, maybe abs, right? And so, but one of the things we did is, like, I think this could be a practical takeaway for a woman who's watching this, is maybe don't avoid push-ups or chest press, but bring it in. do close grip variations,
Okay.
right? Where you're going to emphasize more triceps.
Yeah.
So you'll still work this area because you don't want to atrophy, but you're putting more of your effort towards your triceps. So just don't necessarily all out avoid,
Yeah.
doing pressing movements, which are going to work those areas, but maybe just bring it in.
Modify a little bit.
Exactly. Or if you're someone who, again, your traps are getting bigger and you're using maybe deadlifts to build up your glutes, maybe instead of doing deadlifts, maybe focus more on hip thrusts for a while, because deadlifts are going to build up the traps and things like that. So to your point, you can just program around it, right?
Yeah.
If you are that exception to the rule. I think in most cases that's not how it is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, like average person is not.
Yeah. So on that first point of the bulky being one of the myths, do you think there's any other myths about female strength training?
That you need to do tons of cardio to lose weight.
Okay.
I don't agree with that. I mean, cardio is important for like cardiovascular system, but it's better if you do strength training because building muscle burns more calories at rest. Like when you have more muscle in your body,
Yeah.
you build more calories at rest, and you don't even need to work out as many days if you have more muscle. You know what I'm saying? It like
Yeah.
saves you time. Also, you don't need to like do cardio every single day. You can just do a couple of days a week, and the rest of the time do strength training.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that is I know there's people out there who love doing cardio, but I know just as many people who really don't love the idea of being on a treadmill or elliptical or whatever for long periods of time. So if you heard that, hey, you don't have to do that, you could allocate that time more efficiently to do something else.
Yeah.
I think people jump on that, but there's still some people who really resist that idea of, again, needing cardio to be the number one priority to have that type of weight loss goal.
Plus, doing cardio, it's gonna break the muscle down in the long run. Like if you're just doing cardio,
Yeah.
like eventually it's gonna break your muscles down.
Yeah. Yeah. Mike, the owner here, he always says, take a look at a sprinter and take a look at a marathon runner, and that will pretty much tell you everything you need to know.
Exactly.
Right? And so, yeah, it's not to say that there isn't a lot of benefit in doing cardio for the purpose of weight loss, right? But I think to your point, I heard this imagery once, like when you're strength training regularly and you have good amount of muscle, it's like your car is idling all day long, right? So without even really driving too much,
Yeah.
right, and putting all that deliberate effort in, the fuel gauge is coming down, right, in the form of our calories, right? So it's something that we can do without even having to really think about it to just naturally stay more lean, right?
Yeah. And also, like, I think having more muscle, you will have more freedom. Like you could eat more. Like you don't have to think as much as about like your calories. Oh my God, today I like overeat 200 calories. I'm gonna get fat. But having those muscles on you, like it burns more calories, so you don't kind of have to worry about the calorie count.
Yeah.
If you like tracking.
Yeah, in some ways, actually, your food intake can be empowering, right? Because, if you did decide, for example, to have an extra portion of something, I think when you are in a regular, in my experience, and I've seen this with clients too, when you are in a regular discipline of strength training, you can kind of almost go into that mindset of, I'm going to use this for my workout. Right? I'm going to use this to do that extra rep or really push it tomorrow. Where with cardio, unless you're doing intervals or sprints or something like that, the goal usually is just to burn calories, right? You're not really working towards something other than just burning the calories, right? And I think, again, that can be effective in an overall strategy of just burning enough calories throughout the week to achieve weight loss. But the limitation of that obviously is, I mean, gosh, you could be on a treadmill for like 30 minutes and then just eat one Oreo and then it's gone. It's just gone, right? So
Too
to
much
your
stress.
yeah, so to your point, as I kind of look through some of the bullet points of what you wanted to talk about today, starting with breaking the myths and the bulkiness, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
number two, talking about strength training versus cardio and why both matter. You know, when you have to have a little bit of both, right?
Yeah, of course.
So how much of a role do you think with your how you train and how your clients train, if their goal is to lose weight, right? What do you think is like a good ratio, a good percentage of time spent?
Um, Strength and cardio.
Yeah.
At least two, 3 times a week strength, and maybe a couple of days in between you do a walk. It doesn't have to be like super intense cardio. I think walk is pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's interesting about like it's interesting you say it. One, I know you love walking.
Yeah.
You do that with your
Yes.
family, and I think that's so cool. But one thing people don't always think about is when they are in the gym, what we do here in the gym is we are doing exercises or things to make our body to adapt to something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think sometimes people hop on an elliptical or a bicycle or things like that, not necessarily realizing if you're walking at 2.5 miles per hour on a treadmill and you're on a casual 2.5 mile per walk, just walking with your family, there's no difference,
Oh yeah.
right?
You enjoy the second one more if
Yeah,
you're with your family.
yeah. Which is harder this time of year. Right now
Or
it's
just
the beginning of
walking like
February, but
in nature. I love just walking outside, just listening to the birds and sounds around me and just being in my head.
yeah, yeah. So so again, what would you prescribe to like the average client, right? When you're thinking about, let's say you had your perfect scenario and they're trying to lose weight, but also trying to, get stronger, get toned, right? What do you think is like a maybe average of what you would recommend to clients?
So at least 2 times a week strength training.
Full body?
Yeah, full body. 2 times, that's minimum. And I would add maybe another day of like intense cardio, or like we do with one of my clients, like at the end of the session, she does another 20 minutes of cardio. After the strength training, she does a 20-minute walk, like a brisk walk,
Yeah, yeah.
something like that, to like burn a little bit more calories
And what do you think
in
when
her
you say
days.
intense cardio, what are you referring to?
Maybe an elliptical, not just a walk, maybe a brisk walk.
Yeah.
Not everybody like running, but I think elliptical is more safe, like
Just
even for the knees.
enough to like really rev your heart rate
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Yeah. And again, going back to that working out, being adapting to a new feeling, a new stimulus.
Or do like a class,
Yeah.
maybe a Zumba or something once a week.
Yeah.
Like that client that I just mentioned, she does a dancing once a week. So that's a good addition
Yeah.
to the strength training. She does her dance and then she does 20-minute walk after the strength training. So that's pretty good.
And that plays into making it more enjoyable too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
You're
you
gonna
have to do something that you like doing. Like
Yeah.
if you like hate running, you don't have to do it. You're never going to stick to it if you don't like doing something. Like
That's
you have
true.
to find something you really enjoy and implement that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And when you're talking about again the strength training versus cardio, I think it's important what you just mentioned. If you're looking at how to programming it, I think it's the most effective, to your point, like what you mentioned with your one client
Mm-hmm.
doing the cardio after, to do cardio after. If you're going to do them both at the same time, I think in my experience, it's made the most sense to do the cardio after.
After, yeah.
Because your strength training is not necessarily going to make it very difficult for you to go do your cardio, right? But if you do 20, 30, 40 minutes of cardio and then strength training, your strength training will take a big
Oh,
dip.
for sure, yes.
So your performance will not be as effective,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore the results won't be as effective. You're not going to be able to do as heavy, as many reps,
Mm-hmm.
so you just won't get as much from it. So I think in my experience, it's going to be much more effective to do the strength training first if you're going to break them or do them up on the same day, right? So you have any more you want to add on that particular point?
No.
No, you're like moving on. So the next thing you want to talk about were the real benefits of strength training. So in your experience, what are the real benefits, right? Because it's one thing for us to say all these things, right? But let's say someone is sitting here listening and they're still on the fence, right? What would you say to them?
So in my own experience, I just felt better in general, more energy, because I could eat more. It was
Yeah.
like, for me, this was the biggest issue was under eating. So when I started eating more and I started pushing it more in the gym, I started feeling way better, more confident, also empowering. You
Yeah.
get stronger. You're like, oh my God, I can do this. You know, it feels so different. Like you
Yeah.
feel when you're strong as a woman, especially like, oh my God, I can lift this weight. Not like some of the guys cannot do that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good. That's true.
So that's the other thing I wanted to mention. Like a lot of female clients, they are afraid to lift heavy.
Mhm.
They think that, oh, if I lift heavy again, I'll become bulky,
Yeah.
which is not true
Yeah.
also.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny how again, kind of going back to the differences. Again, guys, I know it's 2025, so I know, men and women don't, we have differences, so it's okay.
Yes.
So when you are going into like looking at this, right? You have the one example of the men want to hit my hit your elbow, hit my biceps, my chest, my this, right? And women, I want to hit my glutes, my triceps, right? On the same note, there's that funny difference that I've seen, which is men tend to be more likely to overdo heavy weight training, hurt themselves, bad form,
Yeah.
where women tend to be the opposite,
Doing the high
right? Like
reps,
I'm
like,
afraid to hurt myself. I'm going to do a gazillion reps, right? And like most things in life, it's the balance, right? We all need to kind of meet somewhere in the middle. You don't need to do super, super heavy with bad form. You can do it, take a few reps off, lighten the weight, guys, right? Work
yeah,
on your form for a little bit. And same thing, women, again, you don't need to be afraid, right?
yeah,
As long as you are doing things with the right form,
exactly.
you're progressing reasonably, right? Yeah, maybe don't jump straight to a 40-pound dumbbell if you've been doing 20s or 15s, but yeah, you don't need to be afraid.
Yeah, and of course, if you're new, you need somebody's help. Like it's hard to just start new. So maybe trainer is a good option, or
Yeah.
like following. Maybe you have like a friend who can help you, give you some tips. But
Yeah.
just walking in there and just start, or like what helps, it's like having a plan. Like before you walk in, you have a plan. Okay, I'm gonna do this and this and this and this today. So you feel more confident when you go in to the weight room. You're not
Yeah.
gonna look like you're lost and you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Get a personal trainer. That's an unbiased recommendation, guys. So, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I think when you're considering just the realities of strength training, you do have to push yourself, right? That is a part of it, right?
Yeah.
And so, whatever you do, to your point, right? Whatever you have to do to get over the mental obstacles, to start challenging yourself enough to where you're going to start feeling that muscular burn and occasionally feel like you can't do one more rep, that is where you're going to see the results, right? I
Yeah,
think that's,
yeah.
again, I always, when we're talking about these different points, I always, whenever we can, for our audience to inject practical tips, right? So I would say on that point, my practical tip for women getting more from, not being afraid, like you said, to lift heavier, right? It would be just start with getting used to feeling the muscle getting really tired, right? Like if you're afraid to take it to muscle failure, which is the idea of you can't do a single rep, like you're doing a bicep curl and you just can't do it. If that's something that is a little scary for you because you haven't done something like that before, perhaps just get to a point of what some would call positive failure. And positive failure refers to the idea that maybe not on that rep you're failing, but you have a good sense that probably on your next one you couldn't do it, right? I think that's a great place for a lot of people to start, men and women included, because if they're having a hard time or fearful around hurting themselves, because again, far, far, far too often I see people where, especially, again, more often women, I'll be training them and I'll say, how'd that feel? Again, I picked on my client Christine on this podcast before. I'm going to do it again. So sorry, Christine. She does, what were we doing? We were doing either deadlifts or hip thrusts. I can't remember exactly because about a year or two ago. And I asked her how it felt. She goes, yeah, that felt good. I go, okay. So I put another 10 pounds on. She did another set. I was like, how was that? She's like, yeah, that's a good set. I'm like, okay. So I did it again. I did it again, right? So finally, 2 or 3 iterations of that. The third or fourth time, I'm like, I just take all the weight off. I put like a plate on. I think I probably doubled the initial weight. Finally, she got to that point where I could tell rep 6, rep 7, rep 8, or we're like shaking, burning, right? And so think about that for a second. She ended up using weight that was almost 100 pounds heavier than what she thought she was going to be doing, right? And so imagine if she was, the average person going through the motions at the gym, how many months and years would she have wasted just feeling that whatever that initial feeling was sufficient when it was absolutely not. So all these times you just think I'm holding a dumbbell, oh, well, that's going to make me stronger. It's like, no, it's like any tool. If you don't use it correctly, it's pointless. It's ineffective, right? I mean, maybe mentally it's good to come into the gym and do something, right? But if your goal is to build muscle, to get lean, to get strong, that's what you got to do. Because again, all the ladies out there listening who want to get toned, you have to remember tone is having muscle and showing it, right? So you need to have muscle, right? And that doesn't come without, I mean, again, if you have great genetics and you're already pretty lean, good for you, right? But if you're like most average people, right?
Yeah,
You're gonna have to work at it,
for sure.
right?
Yeah, I agree.
So, well, obviously, right? Tina's over here making me feel a little self-conscious. Nico, do we have a sleeveless shirt in back? Go get me one. I'm like, all right, Tina. So we've talked about breaking the myths, the idea of getting too bulky, right? We just were talking about the real benefits of, before that, we were talking about strength training versus cardio, why both matter, but in many cases, women tend to underestimate and undervalue strength training, right? Now we're getting into, or we've been talking about the real benefits of strength training, right? Are there any, you mentioned, so your energy got more, and then we kind of went on this long tangent about being empowered, right? So, let's get back to that. What were you,
I know as you get older, you're losing muscle and your bones getting weaker. So strength training is very beneficial for your bones.
yeah,
So that's like one of the, especially for older people.
yeah.
And I noticed that also like on the scan, like
Okay.
my
So just
density was
for anyone wondering, we have a bioimpedance analysis machine, or just body composition analysis, where it's going to measure body fat percentages, muscles, bone density, things like that. Not to replace a DEXA scan, but to give a general estimation of where you're at with relative accuracy.
So before I started the consistently strength training, my bone density was like below the optimal. I don't remember exact number, but after it got way higher.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I noticed that was like a big thing for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, not a lot of people realize that in fact, this is really at the forefront of my mind right now, because one of my clients who I just started working with has osteopenia,
Okay.
right? And osteopenia is the earlier stages of osteoporosis, basically, layman's terms. But it's not irreversible, and you can do something about it. So She goes, well, what special exercises should I be doing? I said, well, short of being reasonable and sensible about, what we maybe should do more conservatively, right? Like maybe we just don't jump straight into like tons of jumping and, explosive stuff. But short of that, you train like anybody else because regular strength training that builds your muscles also builds your bones, right? It's the micro trauma that stresses your muscles that creates new growth in muscles. And it's that same micro trauma that stresses the bones and creates new bone growth. They kind of go hand in hand, right? And to your point about being empowered, I'm thinking of that every once in a while. I think of a good quote from our board up front, right? Some of our clients and members write cool quotes up front. And one of them is, if you think lifting is scary, try being weak.
Being weak, yes.
Right? And to your point about empowerment, how many people, gosh, if they could just get a feeling or a sense for being able to do more in their life and those things that they're afraid of, whether it be playing a sport or doing an activity, whatever it is, right? How good it would feel if they could get some of that back, right?
Carrying all my groceries in the same time.
Yeah.
And then I go.
Exactly. And you're curling it while you do it, right? They're like, Tina's got the groceries again.
That's what I train for. Also being able to still lift up my kids.
Yeah.
And they're getting heavy.
Yeah. My dad was really strong and he was a power lifter. And I just remember as a little kid, he could just take me and my brother like this, and we just hang from his arms. Now, he was extremely strong, so he could even do that when we were like 7, 8, 9, 40-something pounds or so. But even that, from the standpoint of a parent, I want that, right? And so people sometimes think of exercising and weight training in terms of being as simple as powerlifting, bodybuilding, right? These grandiose ideas of it, right? But really, the average person like me and you, it's that kind of stuff that excites us. Sure, do we want to look good and feel good about ourselves? Of course, right? But that's something I recently incorporated into my program, was just doing more lateral raises, and lateral raises being like these and front raises, because I really love the idea of being able to do what my dad did, just holding my sons up when they're 10, 20, 30 pounds, right? Well, I guess they get past 10 pounds pretty quick, but 20, 30, 40 pounds, right? So finding things like that, like to your point, to empower you and feel excited, I think, gosh, the benefits of that are just...
I have a really cool story. So one time I overheard my kids talking to their friends, and they said, our mom can bench press 120. And I was like, okay, I can't do that yet, but like it was like they were like so proud of me that I'm so strong. And I'm like, man, I guess I have to work on my bench press now.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to
You're like, yeah, I can
keep up with the expectations.
Yeah.
But that was like really cool. I'm like, I don't even know how they got that idea and that number.
Yeah.
But just hearing that, like talking to their friends about this stuff, I'm like, wow.
That's awesome. They're proud, yeah. I wonder, is that something inherent in children to value strength, right? Like I remember training one of my teenage clients, and his dad is more of an academic type, right? Likes to read a lot, works behind the desk. Very smart guy from what I understood. I think he was just a very, very smart guy. And what I felt was unfortunate about that scenario is his son, who I trained, expressed to me that he just kind of thought his dad was lame, right? And I felt bad for his dad, right? Because if I was his friend, his dad's friend, I'd probably go, yeah, man, that's cool. You're smart. Like an adult thinks that way, right? Like, yeah, dude, you're smart, or you're interested in these topics. I'd love to learn more. But sometimes kids are more simple, right? Like basic and fundamental. So things like just being active and having fun with them and
Yeah.
experiencing life with them, that's what they care most about, it seems
Okay.
like. So I kind of felt bad for his dad, because just
Yeah.
because in his son's mind, he was kind of lame just because he wasn't really someone who was active at all, right? And so I wonder if that's just something that kids just naturally are drawn to, is strength, or not necessarily strength in the sense of, oh, I can lift a boulder, right? Or like you been talking
Mm.
about benching 120, I can bench 500. It's like, no, just they get the sense that you're capable physically. I think that probably puts them at ease too, right?
Yeah.
Something primal, making them feel they could be protected.
You
And
feel safe. Yeah.
yeah, but I'm sure it's also just as simple as, hey, I know mom and dad can play with me and keep up with me, right?
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother thing, right? It's just it's it brings it back to that empowerment of, what kind of life do you want to live,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So breaking the myths, number one, guys, again, unless you are that type of woman where, you have really, really good genetics in the shoulders and traps, you don't have to worry about getting too bulky. And if that is you, you can program around that with some of the suggestions we mentioned, or having a great personal trainer like Tina, right? We talked about the benefits of strength training and cardio, why both matter. And in many cases, if you had to pick one or the other, strength training is really where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. We just were talking about the benefits of strength training, like improved energy, empowered, obviously building muscles, strength, bone density,
Bone
right?
density. Just
So
everyday activity, you just feel better.
yeah, and one of the other things you threw in your outline here was the idea of overcoming gym intimidation. So step 4, right?
So like I mentioned before, I think having a plan before you like enter the weight room, that's a good idea. Like to know exactly what you're gonna do. So when you enter, you don't feel lost and scared. Then just, go and do it.
Yeah,
Also, having a personal trainer or maybe a workout buddy at first, that
yeah,
could help.
yeah. I think that's a great point. Because we're, of course, again, this is the most like plugging we've done in any episode, right? Of course, we believe in training, right? But to Tina's point, whatever you need to do to overcome your fear is what you should do, right? Because there's a reason why that idea of getting more toned or getting stronger, being able to do a pull-up or a 5K or whatever is on your heart, that's there for a reason. And you shouldn't ignore that. And if the thing keeping you from getting there is, like in our gym, you see the corner of the weight room and it's like the dumbbell area, right? And it's like women sometimes look at that like it's sharks circling there, right?
I have one client who like never wants to go there. Like if I took her there once and she was like, no, never again. I want to be in that area. So, I respect her
Yeah,
choice.
that's how she feels,
Yeah.
right? And to be
Yeah.
fair, I'm sure there's men who feel that way too.
But I think gym culture is changing and like female cheer for each other more.
Yeah,
And I
I think
think
you're right.
maybe even men they cheer for when they see a woman trying to lift.
Yeah.
So I think it's changing. Not like before. It was like really scary to be in that area because there were only big guys there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think especially if you're in the right gym culture. I still think there are some toxic gym cultures
Yeah.
out there still. But to your point, I think it's come a long ways, especially here in our facility.
Oh
We
yeah.
definitely go to great lengths to make people feel comfortable, and so still encouraging people to go for it and be strong. But so if you're talking to someone, okay, so there are a couple tips for how to overcome just being intimidated to even start. You mentioned, hey, you could get a trainer, right? I can speak from that personally. I've had a lot of female clients tell me they wouldn't have done these things without me, right? You could get a partner, right? So you can
Partner.
venture into sort of the wilderness together, right? Hand in hand. So what other suggestions do you have? You mentioned having a plan,
Yeah, to have a
right?
plan. maybe don't overcomplicate it. Just do simple movements. Do squats. Do like learn little things. Do a press. Do a squat. Do a deadlift.
Yeah.
Learn these like
Start small.
fundamental things.
Yeah.
Don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think.
Even if you only do 3 exercises that day for like 8 to 12 reps for like 3 sets and just go for 3 exercises, that's still okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. And into modern technology, right? So if you can throw up some person on YouTube
Yeah,
or
that's a good
Instagram
point.
who's a fitness influencer or group class instructor or whoever, right? Someone who can, maybe it's just a recorded thing, but doing that makes you feel like you're part of something. So you're not on your own doing it. You're just doing what the person in the video is suggesting,
I
right?
see a lot of people do that here.
A lot.
Yeah,
I
with
see it
like
all
the
the time.
phone and they just like watching the video.
Yeah. And if that's what it's going to do to get you started and to
Started,
kind of
yeah.
overcome the gym intimidation,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You know, then that's great. But yeah, you're not, again, I think we can't stress it enough that strength training is in many ways, bringing it back to the tool analogy. It's like it's a hammer, it's a screwdriver. Try getting through any job where you're doing construction without those two things, right? Same thing. Without strength training, you're only going to be able to take any sort of results so far, right? And again, I think the research and benefits of it are mounting further and further to the point where it's like trying to look at if at this point, guys, if you're not seeing the benefits of strength training, that's like seeing a mountain in the distance and going, I don't see it, right? It's there, it's there. And if you still, after all this time, don't feel that way, just do more research, because I promise you, if you ignore strength training for too long, you're on the wrong side of history. You will. You will feel that way at some point, because there are so many people out there like Tina who are in great shape, and they've used strength training to empower themselves. And it's not as if Tina hasn't had her own struggles, right? We talked about on the
yeah.
last time you were here that
course.
gaining 20 pounds and was it 20 kilos or 20 pounds?
It was 10 kilos. So
Okay, yeah,
20
so about
pounds.
20 pounds, and after coming to America. But so again, it's worth it, guys. Strength
It's
training
definitely
is worth it.
Just give it a shot. Yes.
Yeah. What do you think?
Start small. Start somewhere, but just start.
Yeah. And what do you think is a good minimum to really set people up for success, right? Because here's the thing, guys. I know we're in a age where, we all want to see results. I'm prone to that too. I grew up with a microwave, so I know how it feels to want what I want now, right? But you're going to have to put some work in, right? So to set people up for proper expectations, what in your experience is a good minimum to where you could start to see some of those benefits we were talking about? Like, obviously you're not going to see bone density instantly. You're going to need to probably monitor that, but the feeling of building muscle, the feeling of more energy, getting stronger, becoming more empowered. When's a minimum amount of time that you can start to feel that?
About 3 months, I think.
You think 3 months?
Yeah.
What do you think, Nico?
You have to trust the process. At least 3 months.
I think energy and stuff like that.
No, I'm talking about.
But yeah, just visually, I always say a little more than 3 months, to be honest.
It depends on how lean you
Depends on
are.
the person, yes.
To be completely honest, but yeah, it depends too.
But I always tell my clients, first things you're gonna notice will not be visible. First, it's gonna be your energy levels, your feelings, but not you're not gonna start seeing muscle definition in a month or two.
Well, yeah, and part of that has to do with how lean you are.
Yes.
Right. So someone who's lean is going to see the results of strength training aesthetically
Faster,
sooner.
yeah.
Right. But that being said, I think we overlooked, and maybe this is one we can finish on here, going back to the benefits of strength training. One thing that can't be overlooked is mood regulation. So for mental health, I wish we spent more time talking about this one because this is probably just as important, if not more important than almost anything else. We get a lot of clients who come in here because they know, because they've done their research, or maybe a doctor has recommended it, or a psychiatrist, etc., right? They've been recommended or know the benefits of strength training, 2Bs, things that help regulate mood, right? And that is something where just, I have to say from my own experience, there are so many times where I feel stressed and I feel maybe a little edgy. I'm like, why am I edgy? Why is, like, someone cuts you off, and instead of just going, you're like, he starts, you know what you're saying, right? And so then I'm like, okay, I've learned over time, I need to work out. I need to work out. And then I work out, and that thing, like, really challenge myself. I think it's important when we say work out, challenge yourself, exert yourself. And then that thing that I was stressed about, that thing that I was angry about, that thing, whatever, I was down in the dumps, I just, like, what was I even mad about?
So irrelevant.
What? I'm more clear.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want that? And that is the type of thing where once you're in a rhythm, you can feel that almost instantly, right? I mean, maybe when you're in the early stages where you're not quite proficient and you still really feel like you're working out the kinks, you're in that learning curve, you may not feel that way. But once you're past that, which can be in just a couple of weeks, maybe sooner, you can start to feel the benefits of your mental health, your mood improving, right?
You start feeling endorphins and everything too.
You feel those endorphins
Instantly after the workout's over.
instantly.
Yep.
So whether or not you're going for, hey, if you're going for tone, it may take a little while longer depending on how much body fat you have, right? Leaner people, it's going to be easier. If you're going for energy, that can happen relatively soon, right? If you're going for strength, that can be relatively soon. If you're going for the mood elevation, that can happen relatively soon, right? So yeah, if you're going for tone, that might be one of the things that could take a little bit longer, the aesthetic goals. But all that other stuff, I mean, who doesn't want to feel more energy, better mood, right? Better sleep, right? All right, guys, we're turning this into a 2-hour podcast now. But that's what's beautiful about it, right? It's like the more we talk about it, it's like, oh yeah, that's another benefit of strength training. That's another benefit of strength training, right? And to be in a world where people are so, I'm not judging anyone for being on medication because I have people very near and dear to me on medication for various things, clients, family, friends, and I see the value in it at varying times, right? And for different reasons. But why take a sleeping pill if you're not working out? Right? Like, why get on antidepressants if you're not working out? Or anti-anxiety medication, right? Like, all these things, just try working out first. I grew up with ADHD. Don't take Adderall or Ritalin. Work out in the morning. Go for a jog with your parents, right?
Yeah.
Try those things. Try natural things that humans are meant to do. And then if you still need it after that, then great, right? Like, I've had conversations like that with clients where I've said, hey, listen, if you try those things then and it doesn't work, then okay, right? Maybe you do need more help, right? But if you haven't at least tried, why are you so eager to take medication? I don't know.
Yes.
I get worked.
Just do it. Just try.
Yeah.
And trust the process. It doesn't happen too quickly.
Yeah.
So it's important to be patient.
Yeah. At least with aesthetic goals.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Some of that other stuff, it can actually happen very soon.
Yeah.
So and I got a little fired up. I need to work out now. So, but anyways, Tina, thank you so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure. We're 2 for 2.
Yeah, it's been fun.
All right. Thanks, guys.